Rachel Reeves has done it again. She has caused turmoil in the markets. She did it before when she cried on the front benches, and this time she has done it by ditching her plans to raise income tax without telling us how on earth she's going to pay for it. Rachel Reeves knows that raising income tax is going to be political suicide. She tried to do a press conference the other day where she spent 45 minutes looking on the verge of tears, blaming everybody but herself for the current fiscal situation. She blamed Brexit, she blamed George Osborne, she blamed Liz Truss, she blamed Putin, she blamed Trump, she blamed global headwinds, and sure enough, none of us believed her and all said, actually, Rachel, it's your fault that we are in this mess. You told us a year ago that you had wiped the slate clean and you wouldn't have to come back for more tax rises. Now it's looking like you might lose your job. So she's figured out, oh gosh, I'm going to lose my job. The voters are going to hate this, so I better U-turn on this. But she didn't think to tell us how she's going to make up the money otherwise. Do you realise how chaotic that is for the markets? And sure enough, we have ended up with a gilts sell-off. The UK government bonds have fallen sharply today after Rachel Reeves ditched her plans to hike income tax. Gilts sold off despite efforts by the Treasury to signal that the planned increase in tax rates had been pulled because of more positive fiscal forecasts. So she's pretended she doesn't need to find another way to make the money because the forecasts have improved apparently, but they may have improved a teeny tiny bit, but not enough to cover the money. And guess what? The people in the markets are not stupid. So this is one quote that we have got from a gilt salesperson. They say the credibility of this government has been shot to pieces by this move. They say the gilt market is thinking we've had enough of them. That being Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer, that terrible pair. They suggested that the Treasury's claim that the fiscal outlook has improved is merely spin. They have made it up because they don't want to hike income tax because they know it is political suicide. Keir Starmer could be gone by Christmas. Rachel Reeves could also be gone after this budget if they do this. So they've ditched it, but they've not figured out how the hell they are going to pay for it. The markets, they know that this is not about the economy. This is a political decision they have taken to reverse the income tax rise. Of course, in a perfect world, guys, they would cut spending instead. But remember, they tried to cut just 5 billion quid off the welfare bill and the Labour backbenchers were having none of it. So they can't cut any spending. They've got to raise tax somehow. And now they haven't figured out how they're going to raise it. Rachel Reeves has been trying to figure out instead, you know, in the lead up to that horrific 45 minutes of her telling us that she was going to, why can't I get rid of this photo? That is in the way. There we go. Excuse the mess up. Slight technical difficulty. Right, so before she stood there and gave us all these excuses that were clearly telling us she's going to raise income tax, right? She was trying to find out how she could tax the rich. And every proposal she was coming up with, that we found out that people are actually just going to move to Dubai and it's not actually going to raise that much money. So hence why she felt she needed to raise income tax. And on the front pages today, the front pages were actually written before she announced this in like well, she didn't announce it, but it was told to the press in the middle of the night. It would have been smart if you wanted to announce this. By the way, Rachel, we've just a little bit of, you know, basic press skills. If you wanted to boast about the fact that you're now going to meet your manifesto pledge and you're not going to raise income tax, why didn't you tell the newspapers at like 9 p.m. latest last night so they could put it on their front page for today? Because all the front pages today say is that Rachel Reeves has tried to raise the money by going after limited liability partnerships, which is where people like lawyers technically don't have to pay national insurance contributions. She was going to go after that. She has been told, Treasury say no, people are going to move their money around in a certain way so that they don't have to pay that. It's not going to work, Rachel. And then the other plan that she had was a wealth tax on people who try to flee the country to places like Dubai. So if you go to Dubai, we're going to do like a 20% wealth tax on any assets that you have in the UK. But then then she got told by the Treasury, that is going to cause a huge number of people to flee there before those rules come into effect. There'll be a huge brain drain and wealth drain and jobs drain. Bad idea, bad idea. So what ideas has she got left? How is she going to make it work, given all of her ideas to tax the rich don't seem to actually work when you crunch the numbers? Well, let's take a look. So she is planning to have a range of smorgasbord approach with a range of narrowly drawn. So basically, taxing very heavily certain small areas. I mean, this basically shuts down whole industries, for example. So we're expecting her to do some big gambling tax. It's just going to shut down the whole gambling industry and the horse betting and all of this. Smart one, Rachel, because she's trying to stick to her manifesto pledge. The reality is, if you do need to raise tax, I don't want her to be raising taxes. I want her to be cutting spending. But if she does need to raise tax, and Arthur Laffer, who's been speaking to The Spectator, is saying this, if you're going to have to raise a tax, probably would have to be income tax, because that way you're thinly taxing a load of different people. So you're not causing like a whole industry, like the betting industry, to crash by taxing them to death with some huge hike. But as I said, limited liability partnerships, not going to work. And then she's also gone back on this idea to tax wealthy people who are trying to move, not going to work, not going to raise any money, Rachel. So how is it going to happen? How much money does she actually need to raise? Because it's really hard to actually keep up with the size of the black hole. It's really difficult because it changes every 2 minutes, and sometimes it's apparently created by her, sometimes it's apparently created by the Tories. It changes every 2 minutes. But it was 30 billion. We're now hearing it might be closer to 20 billion because the forecast had maybe improved a teeny bit, but not enough for her to just ditch the plans to raise income tax. It clearly is a political decision, this plan to ditch the income tax hike. But one thing she is thinking of doing is freezing the thresholds for longer. So we currently have fiscal drag, where more people are paying higher bands of taxes as their wages go up with inflation, and those thresholds were frozen until 2028 by the Tories. Now, if she extends that freeze, that will over time bring in a little bit money into the coffers, but probably not going to cut it. Also, apparently she's planning to add another 5 billion quid to what people have called a wafer thin fiscal headroom of 9.9 billion quid. Decided that needs to be a bit bigger, so there's still quite a lot of money to find. But let's just take a listen to what she told us about freezing income tax thresholds last year.
Having considered this issue closely, I have come to the conclusion that extending the threshold freeze would hurt working people. It would take more money out of their payslips. I am keeping every single promise on tax that I made in our manifesto. So there will be no extension of the freeze in income tax and national insurance thresholds beyond the decisions by the previous government. From 2028-29, personal tax thresholds will be uprated in line with inflation once again.
Oh dear, Rachel, well, that hasn't aged well, has it? Because now, if it is true that you are going to be freezing those thresholds for longer, you're still breaking your promises, because you promised there that will not happen, and you specifically said it will harm working people. I thought you were all about helping the working person, but clearly not. Anyway, that is the latest on the chaos. Maybe we will find out in a few hours that actually the plans to ditch the income tax hike were a fake briefing out of Downing Street from a leak, and it's not actually real, like the whole Wes Streeting leadership debacle. Who knows? It changes every 5 minutes, which is why you need to stay up to date. So make sure you hit subscribe down below if you've not already, because we will be here giving you all of the updates. I'm Chloe Dobbs. Thank you for watching.